3, 2, 1.
O envelhecimento abre mundo de possibilidades.
Growing old opens up many possibilities, the possibilities to do what we love and to be who we are. But without the adequate support, growing older can also bring limitations related to health, isolation, and we believe that in a safe environment that is warm and with solidarity, growing older can be healthy, can be fulfilling. We can accept change and continue learning and developing. We believe that all the people have the right to prosper at any age, and we should have dignity throughout our years, feel well, and we should also live well. This is the decade for the healthy aging, adding life to age.
It feels like I'm not given a chance.
I lack experience.
I'm baggage.
Only weighing people down.
Looking at my age
like it is a disease.
And it hurts.
When people see only my age.
So what's this all about?
Caseta games.
I'm too old for this.
You just want me to say what people say about me.
Weird question, I guess.
My teacher says you'll grow out of it. It's just a phase.
It was never a phase. I never grew out of it.
I guess I'm too reckless, I don't know.
People like to talk very loudly to me.
They say I don't think things through.
You're looking still good for your age.
I'll figure it out when I'm older.
You are having a senior moment.
When the focus is on my age,
Life seems to get a little bit harder.
It feels like I'm not given a chance.
I need to keep up.
Or get out of the way.
I lack experience.
Or too much experience.
I'm baggage.
Only weighing people down.
Looking at my age
like it is a disease.
Where I work, no one takes me seriously.
it makes me feel powerless.
And it hurts.
When people see only my age.
Aging opens up a world of possibility. The possibility of continuing to do what we love and be who we are. But without the right support, aging can also bring limitations. Poor health, vulnerability, loneliness. We believe that a safe, caring, and supportive environment can turn aging into an opportunity to be healthy, to live fully, to embrace change, and keep learning and developing. We believe all people have the right to thrive at any age, adding dignity to years, well-being to years, life to years. It's the decade of healthy aging in the Americas, adding life to years.
El envejecimiento abre un mundo de posibilidades.
Aging opens a world of possibilities, the possibility to continue doing what we love and being who we are. But without the good support, aging can also bring along limitations, poor health, vulnerability, loneliness. We believe that a safe, nurturing, and supportive environment can change aging into an opportunity to be healthy, to live life to the fullest, to accept change, and continue learning and developing. We believe that all individuals have the right to prosper at any age and to add dignity, well-being, and life to their age, to their years. A decade of healthy aging in the Americas, adding life to years.
So what's this all about?
Che siete against?
I'm too old for this.
You just want me to say what people say about me.
Weird question, I guess.
My teacher says you'll grow out of it. It's just a phase.
It was never a phase. I never grew out of it.
I guess I'm too reckless, I don't know.
People like to talk very loudly to me.
They say I don't think things through.
You're looking still good for your age.
I'll figure it out when I'm older.
You are having a senior moment.
When the focus is on my age,
Life seems to get a little bit harder.
It feels like I'm not given a chance.
I need to keep up.
Or get out of the way.
I lack experience.
Or too much experience.
I'm baggage.
Only weighing people down.
Looking at my age,
Like it is a disease.
where I work, no one takes me seriously.
It makes me feel powerless.
And it hurts.
When people see only my age.
El envejecimiento abre un mundo de posibilidades. La posibilidad
Aging opens a world of possibilities, the possibility to continue doing what we love and be who we are. But without the right support, aging also brings about limitations. Poor health, vulnerability, loneliness. We believe that a safe, nurturing, and supportive environment can change aging into an opportunity to be healthy, to live life to the fullest, to accept change, and continue learning and developing. We believe that all individuals have the right to prosper at any age and to add dignity, well-being, and life to their years.
Buenas tardes, todos y todas.
Good afternoon. I invite Gloria Gonzalez, Ms. Munoz, and Mr. Garzón to kindly sit down at the main table.
Perfecto. Bienvenidos, bienvenidas a la mesa redonda.
Welcome to this round table on older people in the Americas, organized by the OAS, Department of Social Inclusion, and the Metropolitan Municipality of Lima. As you well know, October 1st was the International Day of Older People, and we are also meeting within the General Assembly of OAS under the title of Together Against Discrimination. And it is good to speak about a vulnerable group, such as the group of older persons, which is an extremely important issue for the region, and also to talk about progress and challenges that we have in the Americas to foster the rights of older persons in the Americas and their inclusion. I would like to invite Mrs. Gonzalez to make her opening statement, please. Good afternoon, one and all. This is a wonderful room. I am very pleased to have you and the gentlemen with us because we will all be older persons. On behalf of the mayor, Miguel Romero, who at present is at an event with the Embassy of Korea at the Municipal Palace. So we have a lot of events these days, and the mayor would like to be present in all of them, but we are here to represent him since he was unable to be here. This round table is very interesting because, as you can tell, I represent the municipality and I am an older person. As I always say, I am the oldest in the room. I'm at least amongst the women, men as well, but they take care of themselves. But amongst the women, I am the representative of the older persons, and when Roberto talked to me about this, I told him that I thought it would be a very good idea to hold a meeting at the municipality because we have a social development department. Lucia, thank you so much for being here as the manager, and they take care of elderly people. During the pandemic, there was preferential attention provided to this vulnerable group. After the pandemic, we had an open house for everybody, which is in Lima. And when Roberto told me, no, the Americas are getting old, I said, what happened? We've only been independent for 200 years. How could time go back so quickly? But unfortunately, this is the case. And in this round table, we would like to talk with our friendly institutions about the fact that we are going to hold this round table. I'm grateful to all of you for being here. This is a beautiful room. Thank you so much, Roberto, for having this international event take place here in the Municipality of Lima, where we welcome with open arms these events, which are very important and a learning experience. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much, Mrs. Gonzalez. I now invite Dr. Matilde Munoz, Director of the Social Inclusion Department of OAS. Thank you so much, Roberto, for offering me the floor. Good afternoon to one and all. And I would also want to welcome all the people who are connecting virtually to this conversation. It's a true pleasure to be with you today, and we wish to thank, on behalf of OAS, the Municipality of Lima for having welcomed us, and to PAHO for organizing this, and for the confidence that they had in OAS to co-organize this roundtable. And I also thank the members of our panels who are going to share their ideas with you. An important issue to start this discussion has to do with the need to indicate how important is the complementarity of the work of PAHO and the OAS. On the one hand, health matters are in the hands of PAHO, but our work with regard to inclusion of older persons has to do with the OAS, because we have the responsibility of promoting the signature, ratification, and implementation of the Inter-American Convention of the Rights of Older Persons. This complementarity is guiding our work today, and it is within this context I would like to make two brief comments with regard to this afternoon's discussion. There are 2 points. I will be very brief, and I am sure that our colleague from PAHO is going to talk a little bit more about the situation of older people in the Americas and the right to live a full life and a healthy life. And I also want to analyze very briefly how pertinent is this decade, considering the Inter-American Convention of the Rights of Older Persons. First of all, we know that the PAHO estimates indicate that in 2017, 14.6% of the population of the Americas was over 60 years of age, and by 2050, we think that the population will reach 25% in Latin America and the Caribbean, and even 30% in some of the OAS countries. These figures, without a doubt, are an opportunity and an important challenge. The opportunity is that the data and estimates will help us develop informed replies of public policy to ensure a healthy older age for the citizens of the Americans and ensure that their rights are respected. But on the other hand, we have the challenge. There are several challenges. The diagnosis of the PAHO, and we are certainly going to speak about it in our roundtable. We know that thousands of older people in this situation are living in a situation of discrimination and abandonment. So we have an even greater challenge to protect the rights of older people, especially when these women are women, Afro-descendants, indigenous populations, refugees, and other vulnerable population, because these citizens are exposed to multiple cross-cutting discrimination situations. So the guarantee of the rights of older persons in the region poses a great challenge, and it is important to strengthen actions to protect their protection of their rights and their inclusion in the economic, social, political aspects, in all aspects of our social life, and with the additional challenge which was created by the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected in a disproportionate manner the older population. It has highlighted the differences that there are with regard to the protection of older adults, especially those who have cross-cutting vulnerabilities, which I just mentioned. With regard to the decade for a healthy aging, with the content of the Inter-American Convention on Older People, at the OAS, we believe that the decade offers a unique opportunity to unite the OAS member states to prepare policies which will improve the lives of older persons and their families and their communities, and also to foster the signature and implementation of the Convention of the protection of the human rights of the older persons. And Roberto Rojas has the mandate of fostering this work. This convention is the first instrument that we have in the world on this issue, and it is there to promote, recognize, and ensure that the full rights of older persons are taken into account in order to ensure their full integration into society. This convention, for the first time, shows a regional consensus on what does active and healthy aging means. And it is very important to know that we have a consensual definition on this and what each country needs to do. It is also important to mention it, but I'm not going to go into details because we do not have the time for it. The action plan for this decade for healthy aging, linked to the changes in the way we think about how we think and we feel with regard to aging, and also the ideas about communities and how communities also have the responsibility to include and protect this person. And the third one is related to the integrated measures with regard to access to primary healthcare service of older persons. And lastly, the long-term care measures. All of these are related to our Inter-American Convention for the Rights of Older Persons. I'm saying all this to show that we believe that the implementation of the Inter-American Convention will be a significant contribution to obtain the objectives that we have for this decade, and this is why this afternoon's meeting to think about ideas and propose new ideas and think about new ways to promote all the necessary actions and to implement the objectives of the convention and the decade are essential to push the agenda forward and also to make other countries join the countries that are already signatures of the convention in the ratification of this instrument. I believe that the countries that I just named have already ratified the instrument, and we invite all our countries to do so as well. Thank you on behalf of OAS for the opportunity to co-organizing this roundtable. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Muchas gracias, Betilde. Ahora le damos
Thank you so much, Matilde. Dr. Carlos Garzón, representative of PAHO in Peru, has the floor.
Gracias, Roberto. ¿Se escucha bien?
Thank you, Roberto. Can you hear me?
Muy buenas tardes, señora
Good
Gloria
afternoon,
González, regidora
Mrs.
municipal,
Gloria
y
González,
representando al alcalde de Lima,
who is
a
representing the
Vicente
mayor
Muñoz, directora de
of Lima,
Inclusión Social de la
Mrs.
OEA,
Muñoz
y
from the
representando
OAS,
a Miguel Ángel
who
Trinidad, representante
represents
de la
Miguel
OEA
Ángel
aquí
Trinidad.
en el Perú, a los ponentes nacionales e
I
internacionales que
also
nos van a
greet
acompañar en
all
este
our
evento
panelists,
paralelo en
national
la
and
Asamblea General
international
de la OEA,
panelists,
a los
who
y
will
las
be with us
asistentes
in this
presenciales y a quienes nos
parallel
escuchan de manera virtual,
side event.
al doctor Enrique Vega, el colega desde
We will
Washington, y a la
hear
doctora
Dr.
Ivy
Enrique
Lorena Talavera,
Vega
que me acompaña en la
and
sala.
other colleagues
Para
who are
todos,
here
Roberto,
present
los
in the
presentes
room.
reciban un especial saludo de
Also,
la
Ms.
OPS
Liz
y
Vela.
nuestra satisfacción
My
por
greetings.
estar
I want
conjuntamente
to tell
trabajando
you
en
how pleased we are
en
to
este
be
espacio que es
working
muy
with you
importante dentro de las
during
políticas
this
que
meeting,
manejamos
which
en
is
la
very
organización en todo el
important
tema del
with
curso de vida.
regard to
Quería
the
iniciar hoy
life course.
anunciando
I would like to start today by announcing three objectives for this roundtable. And I believe that this is important because we need to have in mind why we are here. It is necessary to generate a dialogue about the rights of aging people in the Americas, and it is necessary to hear the experiences and the voices of older persons and increase the opportunities to cooperate and make progress with concrete measures. The lady who spoke before me, Matilde, said it very clearly. We need to do that. Aging and demographic transition in the Americas is taking place at a very accelerated pace. In 35 years, we will probably be reaching what other countries such as Europe did it in 65 years, or others did it in 75. So we are doing this at a very rapid pace, and to do so, we have an opportunity for countries and for the convention, because we can now make sure there is a change, and this must be done through the life course. We should not only take care of aging people, we have to start from an early age, respect older people, the issue of ageism, there are a lot of elements which we have to take into account. There are very interesting data, as we just heard, amongst the changes that we are expecting between now and 2050. About 11% of the population for 2010 was above 60 years of age, but this percentage is going to go up to 17%, and by 2050, 1 out of 4 people will be over 60. So we will go from 60 million to over 150 million of people who are above 6 years of age.
For the population of over 60 years of age, with the consequences that aging entails. The increase in the proportion of older persons has been accompanied with an increase in life expectancy, but that life expectancy does not mean greater health of those who live longer. The gap between life expectancy and healthy life expectancy is a public health problem for us. The decade of healthy aging established by the UN is a 10-year opportunity for all countries to make progress, including with instruments such as the convention and other tools that were mentioned. Enrique Vega from Washington will go into more specific details, so I won't delve into details, and I only want to say that this is an excellent opportunity to move ahead with our joint agendas and for each and every one of us. We have to work together and get ready for this change. That's the best thing we can do. And thanks for our support and your support. We have just left behind a pandemic that has left major lessons, not only for this group of the older persons, which is maybe the one who was most impacted by the pandemic, but no one here in the room has not had a person affected by the disease. And so this has been a dire impact for all. Thanks for the invitation, and I wish you the greatest success in your endeavors. Thank you, Dr. Garzón. Now, we will invite Liz Vega, the Commissioner of the Ombudsperson for Older Persons in Peru, and Enrique Vega, Unit Chief of Healthy Life Course Unit at PAHO. They're both with us virtually, and they will tell us what has been the progress in the implementation of the convention, but also the strategy that the Ombudsperson and other units have made, coordinating with other organizations for the ratification of the convention. And this is an example for all the countries who still need to ratify the convention. Could you please upload Liz to the screen for her presentation?
Roberto, ¿nos escuchan en el salón?
¿Sí se escucha?
Liz Vela, Commissioner of the Ombudsperson for Older Persons in Peru. Could you please upload Liz to the screen?
Liz, ¿puedes activar tu micrófono, por favor?
Liz, could you please activate your mic? Can you hear me well?
Gracias. Buenas tardes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. From the Office of the Ombudsperson of Peru and the Social Department of the OAS. And I also, my greetings to PAHO and the Metropolitan Municipality of Lima. Thank you for inviting us to this roundtable. I would like to start expressing that on 15 June of 2015, the General Assembly of the OAS approved the Inter-American Convention of the Human Rights of the Older Peoples, which was a milestone in the construction of aging policies, and to have specific rights and a legally binding document is an achievement. Precisely as was said originally, there are three pillars that we consider to be important in the framework of policies for older persons. That is to say, to promote, protect, and ensure. This is the crux to where development policies should move to, of all the states, including Peru, to guarantee effectively for older people the possibility to enjoy their rights in an equal playing field as set forth in the convention. There are different problems for older persons. In Peru, we have to remember that already in 2019, the Ombudsman warned about the inequality conditions that affects the older people in the area of health, education, and others. But precisely within the older people are the older women, those who suffer the greatest impact, and especially the rural older women. And we consider that the contributions for the minimum conditions established in the Inter-American Conventions is a map to follow to have good aging policies. And by implementing and approved this legally binding convention, Peru has accepted different obligations that it has to comply with in favor of the older persons in areas such as the right to equality and non-discrimination, and also to have the autonomy and independence of older people. In the rest of Peru, for example, the idea of an older person recognize the right to age. What does this mean precisely for older people to exercise fully this right? And when they need health services, they don't have the single guarantee having to go to a hospital in our country or a residential health facility. In the rural area, we also consider it important to consider certain conditions that have to be changed on behalf of older persons. In the case of Peru, the National Statistics and Information Technology Institute determined that in 2017, there were people of more than 70 years of age who lived by themselves alone, and many of them lived in isolation. And so there is a challenge at the level of older persons policies within the Inter-American Convention. And currently we are in the decade of healthy aging. We consider it important to indicate that the Inter-American Convention was a milestone to promote an active environment in aging, and it prioritizes the aging topics in public policies. In Peru, the Inter-American Convention entered into force on 31 March 2021. And in addition to what has been mentioned, another challenge will be the implementation of policies based on treatments which are differentiated based on age, both in the area of employment, education, health, and others. Even though the Inter-American Convention establishes the basic conditions that states have to meet, it will be necessary to also develop internal regulations that put into operation those principles, so that those who take care of older people in our territory have the necessary tools to develop those programs and services guaranteeing quality conditions. Another of the challenges in the case of Peru will be the implementation of a care system. We are having actions in that sense, but there's a challenge to change a model of attention up all the way to the provision of service. And we also have to add, and we have been requested this, that we share in this presentation one of our actions at the Ombudsperson Office in Peru to promote the ratification and implementation of the convention in Peru. When we became aware that the OAS and other organizations who are working in this topic, since 2014, we decided to create a working group with the participation of public representatives and representatives of the civil society, because we consider it important to start talking about a legal instrument that protects and supports older persons. With its approval in 2015, we continued our momentum through campaigns, specifically through a campaign called Join the Elderly, to open up the participation of all the citizens in support of the elderly up to the approval of the convention. And in the framework of this campaign, we also had fora and discussions and workshops, because we considered that it was important to allow people to speak in favor of the convention, and also those responsible for the instrument should promote the knowledge about the convention. And this has been a success of our campaign. In this framework also, there were different official communications at the executive branch level and also at the Congress of the Republic. The government branches in charge of implementing the convention. We consider it important and basic, the role that the civil society has to play, that it be precisely the elderly, those who acquire ownership of the instrument and its scope, and to allow them to request the approval of the convention in our country. And finally, as I said at the beginning, the convention was approved in 2020 in the Congress of the Republic and it entered into force on 31 March of 2021. Therefore, we are in a new stage at the Ombudsperson's Office, and we have to implement a role of supervision of the convention implementation in Peru. And this topic, which is a priority in our institution, has also needs to be a work area. This year, through the Ombudsperson of Peru, the Inter-American Federation of Ombudsperson created a working group on the elderly, coordinated by our institution, and we considered it also important to prioritize knowledge about the Inter-American Convention, and so we have planned a training session addressed at all those who work in human resources institutions, so that they become aware of the Inter-American Convention and they may become apprised of the scope of the convention and how important it is for the life of the elderly. And so from the Ombudsperson's Office in Peru, we continue fighting for the rights of the elderly, having as one of the main pillars the human rights protected by the Inter-American Convention. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Liz, for your work and for this presentation. Now we invite Dr. Enrique Vega, who has a presentation to make also. Dr. Vega, welcome via Zoom. Thank you, Roberto. Thanks everybody for the opportunity to be here to greet you And the authorities of the government of Peru, the municipality of Lima, are host for this important event, and representatives, member states of the OAS and PAHO, and also greetings to my colleagues, both of OAS and PAHO, who are participating here. And of course, also my greetings to all my civil society friends and colleagues, and very especially the subject of this activity, the elderly persons of the Americas. On behalf of PAHO, I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate at this event. Also, we thank the Social Inclusion Department of OAS for co-sponsoring this parallel event to celebrate the International Day of the Elderly. For us, all of this is a great opportunity. You have mentioned, many of those who have spoken before me, despite the great inequities that our region of the Americas has, there has been a significant democratization of longevity. There has been an increase of more than 20 years in the life expectancy in the last 60 years in the Americas. And this is a unique situation. Never before in the history of mankind there had been such a quick and considerable increase in life expectancy. Last time that life expectancy increased by 20 years, it took several centuries. So this is really very unique. The region of the Americas already in 2017 had more elderly of more than 60 years old and children less than 5 years old. But at the end of this decade, we will have more elderly people than young children. And so for the first time also in the history of mankind, we will share the time. 5 generations will be coexisting at the same time in our planet, and with its own ways of visualizing, understanding, and responding to social and personal needs within the international community. So we need to understand and work towards a movement that integrates those processes towards a better world. This increase in life expectancy has not been accompanied, as Dr. Garzón said, by a parallel increase in a healthy life expectancy. Now we have a several-year gap between healthy life expectancy and just life expectancy. Many elderly have increased life expectancy, but with lesser health and many problems. In that context, in August of 2020, the World Health Assembly in Geneva approved the decade of healthy aging. And as part of the resolution approving that decade, member states of WHO requested the Director General that it extend the request to transform the decade into a decade of the UN system, given its intersectorial and cross-cutting nature. So it should not be restricted to the WHO. And that was so. The General Assembly of United Nations in December of 2020 ratified the healthy aging decade as a decade of the United Nations systems for us in the region of the Americas. Of course, this is not only a topic associated to the United Nations system, but it is also linked to the Inter-American system, which has been a pioneer in many of the actions that we are now promoting. And also the approach of an active and healthy aging in the region. The decade of aging is a process, a movement that promotes the transformation and development that facilitates decision-making, that includes the elderly in the political decision-making to change society in the search of that healthy aging process.
The vision of healthy aging is reflected in the four basic elements of this decade. First of all, is to change the way we feel, think, and act with regard to age and aging. That is a process which requires social conviction, the participation by all sectors of the society under the leadership of aging people, the older persons of today and also older persons in the future, those who will be living during the next 10, 20, 30 years must also participate in this process. It is very important within that context to fight against discrimination due to age, discrimination, prejudices, stereotypes against aging and older persons must be an important priority, which needs to be eliminated from our society. And I believe that although all forms of discrimination are still present in our society, none of them is tolerated socially, except the discrimination due to age. And I believe that that is a fundamental factor, and it must be a fundamental change that we must have, not only due to what it means from the ethical point of view, but also because if we can reduce the discrimination and those prejudices, we will be able to eliminate obstacles which limit the social development and social progress in our society. The second basic strategy included by the healthy aging decade is to have friendly communities for older people. Friendly environment for older people is friendly for everybody. And this friendliness not only creates minimum conditions to satisfy older persons, but also means that from the environment and social point of view, it will allow for the development and the contribution of older people to the social development of their societies and communities. For us at PAHO, this movement is fundamental due to several reasons. It is fundamental to obtain the participation of older persons. They must be the main actors of this initiative because they contribute to the cross-cutting work in a clear and concise fashion, which allows us to obtain concrete results. And also because it favors the transformation at the local level, the value of municipalities, the value of mayor's offices, who are a lot closer to older people. The third element has to do with the health services which must take into account the needs of aging population. The example provided by COVID showed us the lack of preparation of our health services, even in countries which up to not so long ago seemed to be part of the golden countries with regard to aging populations. We could see what happened when they responded to that population. So we need to review those processes. And finally, those who, for one reason or another, do not have a healthy life and depend on care should have long-term care which they require and which respects ethically their rights as older person. We need, in order to generate this work for the decade of, we need several conditions which are fundamental. We need leadership. We need leadership at all levels, global, regional, national, and local level. Leadership also which fosters the active participation and the decisive participation of older persons. We need very well-prepared human resources. We also need data and research which allows us to take care of them and to take evidence-based decisions in order to help countries make progress. Esteemed colleagues, I do not wish to extend myself much more. I believe and I hope that this roundtable will contribute to develop a much more active vision and also a more concrete vision of how we can make progress for the decade and to make progress with the Inter-American Convention. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Vega, por su intervención.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vega, for your intervention. We will now go to the panel, Experiences and Challenges from the National Perspective. We would like to invite Dr. Lavera, who works at PAHO in Peru, Dr. Catherine Castillo Mena, Director of Older Persons in the Ministry of Peru. They are present here, and we also have representatives online who will be introduced by Dr. Talavera. Good afternoon, one and all. Thank you so much, says Dr. Talavera. And as Dr. Director Garzón said, thank you so much for organizing this meeting for our joint work. I would also like to greet all of those who are connected and are not present here in this room. I will coordinate the panel on the experiences and challenges from the national perspective. We will now be able to listen to somebody from the Parliament of Barbados, Alex Ordóñez, from the Ministry of Colombia, Norbel Román, President of the National Council for Older Persons of Costa Rica, and Ms. Catherine, who is here with me, Catherine Castillo Mena, Director of the General Direction of Older Person, Ministry of Women and Vulnerable Populations of Peru. I thank them very much for their efforts, and as our colleague from OAS and Dr. Garzón have already said, and Dr. Vega has also said, we know that there has been a lot of progress made, but we also have challenges. In the past decade, the region of the Americas has shown that there has been an accelerated, considerable aging of the population. But we're prepared. This is why we're here. We know that there is a demographic change, but there are also interpret. We have to be prepared for the future. And there are several initiatives at the national and world level, especially with regard to the approval of the convention, which you have all received. We have to make sure that the Inter-American Convention for the Protection of Human Rights of the Older Persons, but in addition to the convention, there is another opportunity, the Decade for Healthy Aging. This is also an opportunity for concerted action and to make joint efforts in order to reduce the gap between aging and healthy aging. I am going to give the participants 10 minutes in order to speak about which progress and which are the challenges which they have had in the respective countries. I will first give the floor to Mr. Corey Line from Barbados. He will have the floor in the first place. Mr. Corey Barbados from Barbados, please.
Thank you very much. First, let me start by bringing greetings from Barbados to representatives of the Mayor's Office. Of course, the representative for Senora Miguel Trinidad from the Organization of American States in Peru, and Senora Carlos Garzon, representative for the Pan-American Health Organization, PAHO. Officials from these international organizations, representatives from different countries, members of civil society, of course, my distinguished members of the panel, and you distinguished guests, good afternoon. Let me start by saying on behalf of the government and people of Barbados, thank you to the OAS for facilitating Barbados's involvement in this very important and worthwhile roundtable. Also allow me to thank PAHO, not only for their timely attention to this subject, but for being invaluable partners to Barbados. We are eternally grateful, and we are definitely in your debt as a better country because of your interventions. As we seek to deepen the partnerships with PAHO and OAS, and as we look for new ways to partner, it is my estimation that we are definitely on the right path and on the right track where it's concerned in terms of the efforts against inequality and discrimination in relation to older persons. Barbados has been labeled one of the most rapidly aging societies in the world. And this government has expressed and said so in no uncertain terms that we are moving towards addressing these challenges towards older Barbadians and making sure that it is adequately identified, assessed, and addressed. Simply put, we are making sure that we are taking care of our older Barbadians. Now, I want to start by looking at the challenges, and then of course, I want to look at the progress that we've made. Many of the persons in their remarks would have looked at ageism, and that is definitely a challenge in this part of the region and in this country as well. And we believe that this is something that can be addressed because it was not always so. Just short ago, elders were once respected, and this is something that we believe that working together that we can reestablish. Obviously, we have the challenges of age stereotyping, where age is not seen in a positive light. This is something that we believe that we can promote with the exciting, preparing for things like retirement, healthy and active retirement. In the present time, we are looking at elderly and ageism in relation to just seeing age as becoming sick, senile, lonely. We've also seen the evolution of the familial context, where instead of having the extended family, where grandparents and great-grandparents' roles were highly visible and respected, they are now seen as marginal. Even when you look in the age now in technology and marketing, it is very anti-age in focus, where you see things from cosmetic to fashion, not seeing the elderly persons included in these very exciting elements of everyday life. There is a lack of legislation against elder abuse, and something that we have addressed in looking towards legislation, and I will address in our progress as we report on what we're doing there. But there's no set legal protection against individuals who seek to take advantage of the elderly. Of course, I could not mention our challenges without highlighting the COVID-19 pandemic, which disproportionately would have saw seniors and elders really bear the brunt in relation to not only being sick, but losing many of their lives. The increased NCDs and disability among the elderly population is another challenge that we are grappling with in this side of the country, this side of the region, I should say. And of course, the need for long-term care services. We just had a situation analysis done through our country in where we stand with all our elderly care services. And this is something that has been highlighted, that we are not keeping pace with the number of elderly persons and the facilities that we have to accommodate them. So this is something that we see as a challenge and also an exciting thing that we can see where we can get some progress. Of course, financing. Aging must be looked at through a multifaceted lens. Finance and the economy are critical in promoting healthy aging. There will be an increase in cost of living as one age, and there must be a focus on pensions and financial safety nets, both public and private. The continued involvement of seniors in generating income past retirement, because as we said earlier, with increased cost of living, there will be a need for increased income to treat to that increased cost. A holistic support service for our most vulnerable seniors is necessary, but that comes at a cost and a significant cost. Reducing the current existing burdens on the entities such as our healthcare system and welfare systems are things that we also see as challenges that we are currently trying to address. Of course, that brings me over now to the good part, the progress. Back in October 30th, 2020, this ministry, the People of Empowerment and Elder Affairs, with cooperation of PAHO, facilitated a national conversation on aging and elder affairs, forming the narrative, which allows stakeholders to discuss and engage in the process of developing a new national policy on aging. And this is a significant achievement. This will lead the way and trigger new policies and new legislation to ensure that we strengthen the mechanisms in which we take that same good care of our elderly that I spoke about earlier. In this policy, we're looking at the rising number of older persons in the demographics of 65 plus in Barbados, the increasing numbers of older people in need of care in Barbados, the increasing NCDs and other disabilities affecting older persons in Barbados, and the dramatic change in key social, cultural, political, and other essential conditions over the last 10 years. We also see a need to review and evaluate and update national policies and programs outside of those directly relating to elderly, but right across the board. In this, we've also seen and have adopted the need for a whole of country policy-based response that considers our seniors as key partners in active participation and making sure that we know that those who are responsible for their lives play that important role that they need to play. I am proud to report that we are in the final stages of relaying the 2023 to 2028 National Policy on Aging for Barbados. The draft policy document is a comprehensive policy addressing key areas that I outlined earlier, making sure that our senior citizens have financial and economic security, social security, health and health systems in place, physical and built environment that suit their needs, the social environment, legislation, long-term care, pandemic, disaster, and emergency situation, all in place. Ladies and gentlemen, the overarching goal of the National Policy of Aging for Barbados is to enable and promote healthy and active aging as a way of life for all Barbadians, to ensure that the fundamental rights and freedom of older people are fully recognized, vigorously defended, and strongly preserved. It is the overall vision of this country to make sure that the older persons are sufficiently engaged, equipped, and empowered to lead healthy, secure, and dignified lives. And we also make sure in our progress to report that we have a multifaceted stakeholder interest. Everything that we do, we speak to our agencies that deal with the elderly, whether it is those from the Alzheimer's Association, the Barbados Association of Retired Persons, and the list goes on and on. There's been a robust interest from our stakeholders from within government, the private sector, NGOs, informal caregivers, spiritual and religious groups, educational institutions, just to mention a few, but generally the entire country. We've had many sensitization workshops and various activities, and what we found is that the general Barbadians reaching out to us in the ministry to share their experience, so they feel empowered to be part of the process. We now move from policy towards a better living in our intergenerational engagement. We've recognized the need to have intergenerational engagement, which involves connecting the bridge between the younger individuals and the older individuals, already mentioned by those in earlier remarks. It is a must. The introduction of our grandfather program, which seeks to have older retired persons serve as mentor to the younger persons in our society, particularly in the primary school setting. Also a program in relation to older persons telling their stories and making sure that their history, their institutional knowledge is not lost, and that we have the type of public relation mechanism to share it with the entire country, the region, and the world. Another part we are proud to report of our progress is the education and training. A major part of promoting healthy aging is having the necessary skill set, the knowledge and training to meet the specific population. Also, national development scholarships are being offered by our Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training for persons who are interested in studying in the field of gerontology. The Barbados Community College here and their nursing program they're ensuring that they're training nurses specifically in elder care, and the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute of Technology Certificate in Nursing Auxiliary Studies, a certificate that will see many of our students be able to treat to our elderly population in a significant way. Our current and existing social programs are those that also bring us pride to report on, like our National Assistance Board, which have a significant program of home help, where officers go to the elderly on a daily basis, making sure that their basic needs are met, the cleaning of the house, and the taking general care of those elderly persons. Added recently is our companion program, recognizing that not only the tangible needs to be addressed, but also the psychological and mental. Someone to make sure that they can read with them, spend time with them, share stories, and make sure that that intergenerational gap is also linked at that level as well. Our national insurance scheme is one that we must mention with our old age pensions, contributory and non-contributory, which ensure that that partial dignity is also maintained, where elderly can make sure that they can cover the cost of living. Our Ministry of Health, through the geriatric hospital, our main QEH hospital, Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and polyclinics across the country are there to provide free health care to all elderly persons and ensure that they are kept in the best of health. And of course, this ministry, the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, acts as the glue connecting all the dots to ensure that those services are brought to our elderly persons. In the area of technology, everyone listening will know that technology continues to be a driving force, especially in the dissemination of information to the entire population. Webinars and panels on Zoom allow for presentations and forums where seniors, caregivers, the entire population can engage and have their voices heard and be part of a conversation. I'm proud to share an example with you. During the COVID period, a lot of seniors in my particular community were crying out that they were not being engaged. A small community group within my where I reside put together a program called Days of Our Lives, where the elderly can actually speak to one another on a daily basis, and they even had something called Senior Parliament. This is something I believe that can be expanded throughout this ministry as an initiative to use not only technology, but keep our elderly persons speaking to one another and sharing stories. Part of this new policy will also look at supporting caregivers whose contribution to healthy and satisfying aging cannot be overlooked and is often overlooked. I would like to close with the silver economy. It is also accurate to say that no global or for us regional discussion on elder affairs for now or for the future prosperity can be complete without reference to the silver economy. That is the sector that is formed around seniors over the age of 50, which offers tremendous future opportunities. For example, health will be a major issue in the silver economy of the future. This would therefore be relevant to health systems and their strategies and programs, as well as for insurance companies. The accessibility of older persons to new technology, especially retirees who now have more time to experiment with hardware and software so that they can be an asset to the new digital economy. Research and development initiatives are more and more offering products for services to adapt to the seniors, which contribute to their well-being. The need to find and implement more innovative senior care models, also something that we can look at within the silver economy and evaluating the contribution of caretakers. Ladies and gentlemen, that is just a synopsis of Barbados, some of the challenges, and obviously some of the progress that we can report at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Agradecemos su participación en la cual ha colocado elementos muy importantes, por ejemplo, el respeto, cómo fomentar el
Thank you
respeto.
for your participation, such as your contribution about the elimination of barriers, change of stereotypes, and great changes to promote changes in the access to services and to generate healthcare policies, and also how to face public policy changes that are transforming those or are facing those challenges at Barbados. We thank Barbados for its efforts, and now we give the floor to the second presenter. And remember, you only have 10 minutes for your presentation. Mr. Alex Rodriguez, the floor is yours. Alex Rodriguez from Colombia. Good afternoon, everybody. Special greetings from the Health Minister, Dr. Carolina Gorcho, to the General Assembly of the OAS and the member states, to PAHO and the Municipality of Lima. This is a significant challenge for the new administration that prioritizes the lives of citizens. The Social Protection and Health Ministry is the guiding entity of public policies in our country. We have been the 9th country in having ratified the Inter-American Convention of the Human Rights of the Older People, which has been a great achievement. Thanks also to the presenters who spoke before me, who addressed essential challenges. And also, I thank you for the opportunity to be here. As to the challenges, I want to share some important data in the general context of the elderly in Colombia. In Colombia, a person is considered to be an older person as of age 60, in accordance with the Human Rights Convention of the elderly. And we also conducted a census, and for 2021, we estimated a total of about 7 million individuals of more than 60 years of age, which represents 13.5% of the Colombian population. It is also important to mention that 77% of older persons, that is to say almost 5 million, live in important municipal cities, whereas 22% live in the widespread rural sector in our country. If we make an analysis based by sex, we find that the more than 60 years of age in our country, 55% are women and 45% are men of more than 60 years of age. For us, it is very important to mention that according to the 2020 national census, there were about 60 out of 100 elderly people were economically dependent on others. And if this trend continues, by 2050, the economically dependent population could be about 75%, and by 2070, this could reach up to 77%, which undoubtedly is an aspect that we have to think about how to respond to this challenge. The monetary poverty of the elderly is also very relevant. Everybody needs to have basic livelihood. In 2019, there were, from 2019 to 2020, 30% of these people were not economically healthy. And in the rural environment, there has been a negative change of 6.5 percentage points, moving from 42% in 2019 to 36.2% in 2020, in according to this population census. When we talk in our general social security system and health, we have to involve the topic of retirements of pensions, and almost 6% of the population in Colombia are retirees, which is a small percentage, about 1,600,000 people. In 2020, retirement age women, only 19% retired vis-a-vis almost 20% of men. So there is a gender barrier as to how to, on a gender basis, women have a smaller representativity among the retiree population than men. We also want to say that one of the most significant advances and challenges is that last May, our country approved the National Public Aging and Old Age Policy, signed by 16 national entities that implement actions to improve the living standards of the elderly and also strengthen the healthy aging process that responds to different factors, such as the pension. First of all, I need to mention a demographic transition leading to an aged society, a situation that has placed the elderly at the center of the public agenda in our country, and especially in strategic planning, considering the change of size and age composition of the population, which is one of the highest in the Americas. And also we have an aged society has challenges to reduce the old age inequities, with a greater demand for retirement and also for the greater demand for healthcare services and the guarantee of minimum income and the guarantee of access to an inclusive labor market for a population that didn't have equal opportunities guaranteed. On the contrary, there were greater inequities that continue to be impacting the elderly. I also need to mention the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which delayed the attainment of our objectives. And all this tied to the high prevalence of comorbidities. And this increased the inequality gaps and the response of states to the COVID. And also, we have binding commitments in the global commitments of human rights and the right to a healthy aging. And we also have other commitments in the sustainable development and primary health care and the plan for healthy aging 2020-2030. In order, we need to comply with the constitutional mandates and the legal and legislative commitments, especially under Law 1259 of 2008 and approval of Law 1850 of 2017 and Law 2055 of 2020. I also need to mention that the national public policy of aging and old age that covers to the 2031 has very important pillars. And the public policy tries to ensure necessary conditions for a healthy aging. And we promote a dignified and healthy old age with equality, with protection, promotion, compliance with, and reestablishment of human rights, also in the framework of social security and state protection. On 27 September of this year, we ratified at the OAS we ratified at the OA from Colombia the Inter-American Convention on the Human Rights of the Elderly. Thank you very much. Thanks, Alex. Just as Barbados, you pointed to great advances and the ratification in September of our national policy, and that you have public policies to 2031, but you also showed that challenges are similar and very significant, but the good thing is that you have already identified challenges related to reducing inequalities of gender inclusion and also quality services, and to reinforce all public policies and laws when it comes to retirement, because there is also inequality when it comes to retirement between men and women. So thanks again, Alex, for your presentation. And now we'll give 10 minutes now to Mr. Norbel Roman, President of the National Council for Older Persons of Costa Rica, with the same question. Could you please describe the progress and challenges to promote healthy aging and the human rights of elderly people in your country? Yes, good afternoon. This is Norbel Roman, President of the National Council for Older Persons of Costa Rica. It's a pleasure for me, a great pleasure for me to be sharing with you at this important meeting organized by OAS, PAHO, and the Metropolitan Municipality of Lima, with the topic of the elderly in the Americas, progress and challenges. I would like to share a few slides that can give an idea of our challenges and advances. Maybe our most significant challenge is our demography. Our country has a swift rate of aging, the second in the Americas, and with an aging that we had already been seeing, and now we are approaching towards 2035. Well, there'll be a very significant increase in aging. And so the population of more than 60 years of age will have an enormous momentum. This is a challenge that calls us not to wait until 2035. We have to start working now to face it. This is data from the National Statistics and Census Institute from a survey. And in this respect, I will show some figures. For example, life expectancy at birth, or no, moving ahead, may be the most significant challenge we have is precisely the demographic point in which we are. We have a swift aging rate, a life expectancy at birth, which is the second in the Americas, and with an aging that we had been growing gradually, but now we are approaching a significant milestone in 2035, where there will be a much momentum. And so the more than 60 years of age will have a significant momentum. This is a challenge that looms by 2035, but we have to start working to address it now. This is data from the National Statistics and Census Institute from a survey conducted in 2021, and this ratifies the fact that our population of people elderly of more than 60 years old is 6.8%. Women, almost 300,000, and men, 250,000. This snapshot of this 2021 survey points to the concern of the vulnerable population and in poverty and extreme poverty of elderly, which is close to 27.6%.
De dependencia o algún grado de discapacidad, 28.8%, pero que sabemos que a mayor edad o grupos etarios de más edad, este porcentaje también es más alto de lo que todos nosotros quisiéramos. Es decir, tenemos el gran desafío, no solo de que estamos viviendo más años, sino que quisiéramos que fuera de la mano.
We are not only living for longer, but we would also want to make sure that old age is successful. The new challenge, which I would say is unexpected, which occurred with COVID, is that we had life expectancy when we were born, and there was a theoretic decrease, but life expectation has affected most countries, some more, others less, depending on their health systems. But in our case, according to our statistics, there has been a reduction of 1.1% for men, but we already had a gap, and for women it has been of 0.9. So we do have these challenges from the numbers point of view, and the accessibility to vulnerable population. We need more robust programs, which also constitutes a challenge. I have a couple of minutes now. The progress made, which is related to the challenges. This October, we start with very good news because we are on the third stage of our national consultations on our aging policy. We are taking more measures, strategies, and more actors. This consultation will end around October the 5th, and then we will have a new national aging policy, which will be our guide. This national aging policy has 5 axes: These programs have been developed after these two initial phases, the general population and the objectives. They are related to the challenges which I have just mentioned, which is economic safety, and we are trying to find work sources for older population and also an increased coverage in health for vulnerable population. And we have trying to increase support to these people. The other element is life without violence and the interest of eliminating all forms of violence. So we are going to analyze how to protect, see which are the triggers for violence, and have a national observatory for violence and the determination of these elements to combat them. Third element, which we are working on, is the progressive integrated attention for the population of the country, especially along the coastlines where we have more problems. And we are very pleased because in September 2022, we have already started with a national policy which will offer the opportunity to take new measures not only for the vulnerable population, but also in recognition of the fact that we have to take care of caretakers. And the other element of the program, which is good news in our progress of our aging policy, is the human development, which could be summarized as talking about friendly cities, because we always say that problems are close to home. And so the main measures must be taken close to home. Our path is to progressively convince the 84 local governments of our country to try to work close to home. 24 of them are already starting with these public works and the institutional strengthening, which is very important, as we need to link the measures taken and link the state institutions. We could say that in addition to this, in meeting the objectives for human rights for the population and taking into account our program, which is to stimulate all the consulting members, I will let you know that we have already started to support external consultancy in order to see how we can maintain consultations with the state. And finally, another progress made is the fact that we are doing a second take at the National Plan Against Alzheimer's, and we are starting the second phase of the development of a national strategy on the care for dementia, which is a second case of dependency for the older population. With these information, I would like to thank you once again for your time, and I would like to say that the challenges exist. There are new challenges, the unexpected challenge posed by COVID, and the challenge of a longer life expectancy, but we also have made progress, and we are very pleased to announce that we're going to have an important leap forward in our countries. With those words, I thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you so much, Mr. Norbel, for having talked about the demographic changes and the transformation in your population and the survey that you have carried out in order to link the strategies which you mentioned, poverty, access, and also congratulate you on your efforts in generating new policies. Evidence is very important in order to take action, and you are already making progress with your policies, this is linked to the elements of the data which have been generated by the information you have. You very clearly underlined which were the challenges, but also you spoke about the life expectancy, which is also a very important element. So it is important to take action at all national levels throughout the course of life. We have a last presentation. I have Catherine Castilla Mena, Director of the General Director of Older Person of the Ministry of Women and Vulnerable Population of Peru, who will share in 10 minutes her experience on these issues. Please go ahead. First of all, I want to greet you on behalf of the Minister Claudia Davila, and I would also like to thank you for your invitation to this event and also congratulate you on its organization. I congratulate OAS, the representatives of the Lima Municipality, and also PAHO. As we have already heard, and I believe that this is shared by the representatives of the region, the different situations that we have with regard to older persons present multiple challenges. One of the main issues is the existence of multiple stereotypes regarding older persons. This, together with the great diversity which we already have in Peru throughout the regions of our country. So this in addition to the acceleration of the aging of the population, and in addition to the pandemic or post-pandemic, requires intervention, and we have to have specialized services. Where is Peru going now? What is our main target with our regional and local governments? We have a very diverse population in the country, and therefore it is very important to have direct participation by regional and local governments. With this identification, which is due to our multisectoral national policy, there is a structural discrimination against older persons. So in the diagnosis, which is created for the elaboration of our policy, we have identified that more than 55% of Peruvians, women and men, had the idea that older people are victims of discrimination. In this survey, which has been carried out with regional and local government, we have been strengthening capacities, and also we have been looking for specialized services according to the needs of the older population. For the first stage, the strengthening of capacity, which has allowed the implementation in 15 regions of the country and the local governments, a strengthening of the content of the convention, and in addition to that, the content of policies and other legal frameworks in Peru. We are starting this training with everything that is mentioned in the convention with the objective to apply it at the territorial level, starting from the design of services for older people and also for the alignment of the management systems. This intersectoral and intergovernmental strategy has already been implemented in 15 regions of the country. In 3 of them, in Arequipa, Cusco, and Madre de Dios, there have been service fairs with the characteristics for each one of these regions, which is one of the challenges that we face. One of them is the high turnover of staff and operators who take care of older adults. And the second one is in the electoral process, the change of government in the upcoming months. We have to be prepared for these challenges to ensure that the change in government is not felt in the care of older persons. So in this line of work with the local governments, we once again wish to congratulate the Lima Municipality, which has always provided services and generated meetings such as this one. Second point, as a tool to implement the convention from the legal framework point of view, we have the multi-sectoral national policy for adult people by the year 2030. This policy was approved after a process of diagnostic of older persons, and this is how we realized that there was no real and close information about their situation. This is why we have been working on 2 services. One of them is an observatory which allows us to have access to all the information generated on older persons and at the same time generate the possibility of new services. And secondly, a national survey to obtain specific information of all actors. This policy has 5 priority objectives. The first one is the right to care. Second, promote healthy aging, look at contribution and non-contribution measures. Fourth, the quality of education. And fifth, strengthen the productive and political productivity of old people. In addition to these 5 objectives which we have several lines of action and there are several services. We have 22 lines and 15 services in our multi-sectorial national policy, which will allow us to meet the objectives. These objectives go from specialized services for persons who are in a situation of risk and the system to give new value to the traditional medicine of the indigenous population and for older people as part of the Ministry of Culture's work. Which are the progresses made to date? We have already aligned all the state sectors in order to align the objectives of the policy with the way to implement it. We are also constantly working for the implementation and strengthening of these services. Another progress has been the report on the follow-up of policies for 2021. This report allowed us to assess through the assessment of results, which was socialized and was discussed with other sectors and will allow us to make improvements based on the recommendations received. Within the implementation of the policy and of its objectives, this year there was a new commission, multi-sectoral commission, for the implementation of the policy. This commission will be the place where we not only have a concentration of state institutions, but also the judiciary, the civil society, through the Society for Older Persons and other associates. This is in order to make possible the implementation of the national policy, taking into account the priority issues. We are going to prepare reports indicating which measures are urgent and make new proposals. Which are the main challenges and between now and 2030. By 2030, this structural discrimination due to age towards older adults will be reduced, and they will have full access to the rights, improve the quality of their lives, and obtain their independence and autonomy during their old age. We need indicators for this. And for instance, with regard to the first objective, or with regard to discrimination, we are trying to obtain a reduction to 3.9%. The percentage of older people with health issues which are chronic will be reduced by an important percentage. The percentage of older adults will be increased to 41% to have the people that have access to health services. And the reduction of people who have no access to services will be reduced. And the percentage of adults which are in social institutions will be increased by 42%. In order to meet the time that was given to us, these are the main elements which have been done up to now in Peru in the implementation of the convention and the national multisectoral policy. Thank you so much. Thank you, Catherine. Peru, as the rest of the countries, have tried to make those important changes. And now one important element that Caterina was indicating is to how to improve the competencies needed, but also how to strengthen multi-sectoral work, how to coordinate the work with the regional and national governments, and the cross-cutting across sectors. So we really need to have a multi-sectoral policy which has been established, and see which must be these procedures which are related to demographic changes. And I believe that all countries have very important experiences. They have shared many of them in the intervention. Barbados, Costa Rica, Colombia, and now Peru have shared. And now we need to see what will we do with everything. So congratulations to the 4 countries who have shared their national plans. We have a challenge for us: investment financially and in resources, and to invest in the health sector and moreover. Thank you so much for that. We will go now on to the next panel.
Thank you very much, Ana Talavera, and all the presenters. Now we will move to experiences and challenges from the local perspective. And we invite Ms. Gabriela Orozco, founder of Los Nonos TV, who will moderate this panel, and Lucia Solis Salcedo, Manager of Social Development of the Metropolitan Municipality of Lima, who will accompany colleagues from Chile and Mexico in this panel. The floor is yours, Mrs. Orozco. Thank you very much for the introduction. First of all, I would like to thank the OAS and PAHO, the Metropolitan Municipality of Lima, and I would like to indicate that Los Nonos TV, an NGO, has a digital program with 7 linked segments in psychology, governmental, gerontology, volunteering, and other topics. We are here at this round table with several presenters. At the local level, there are also initiatives such as the program and the global network of friendly cities and communities for the elderly people. The network has more than 1,300 cities all over the world, and the region of the Americas has more than half of its active members. And so both Nama in Chile and the Jalisco state in Mexico are part of this network, but also the city of Miraflores and Lima are also part of this significant network. The question for the first panelist, sociologist Mariona Cleave from Chile. Could you tell us what have been the advances and challenges to promote a healthy aging and the rights of the elderly in your cities? Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Perfecto. Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todas las autoridades.
Good afternoon, all the present authorities, OAS, PAHO, WHO, and the Municipality of Lima are host. The question about progress and challenges to promote the rights of the elderly in Chile, I want to indicate that our Friendly Communes program is conducting certain initiatives to address the situation of the elderly in our country.
La mayoría de ustedes los conocen, pero
Most of you know this information, but we start from here because the cities reflect the values of our societies, and public spaces for the elderly are not numerous in our cities, and so ultimately our cities represent barriers of age-based discrimination that all of us know. So we need to working on cities is a key of the program to address these barriers and limitations.
Senama dispone de 3 componentes.
Senama has 3 components in the Friendly Communes program: information and promotion action, technical accompaniment, and local improvement fund. We have a continuing improvement cycle. You know this much better than we, but what I would like to indicate here is that all of these processes are binding and have a commitment with the diagnosis. They don't only entail the provision of services. This makes a lot of sense from a territorial basis in Chile, because we will review the territorial aspect lately, and we are surprised as how that is an organic process, has been increasing momentum in a particular context that I will address shortly. We had all of this prepared, and when we were going to launch our initiative in March of 2020, the pandemic hit, and it had a significant impact of the lockdown, especially for the elderly, was terrible and required from us protection measures with citizens' participation. But this was a very important problem, because we wondered whether it was possible to conduct diagnosis and participatory activities in such an unfavorable environment such as the pandemic. And the response was yes. We need to identify barriers when they are they are the strongest. And the uncertainty of the teams was very important. We worked directly with municipalities. And so on the one hand, the focus of our activity was in social assistance, and in parallel, telework was implemented and interrupted several consultations and led us to wonder whether it was a priority to talk about the situation of the elderly. And this revealed all the prejudices as to whether the elderly had capacity to face a digitalized diagnosis process. And Andrea, the person in charge of this program, implemented a response, and the elderly at that time started to adjust to the use of digital platforms to participate in digital diagnosis, but we needed to conduct several tests and adaptation for different reasons, but this was worth it. And we continued ahead with this process in very unfavorable and challenging and specific circumstances. Timeline. The commune of Victoria started in 2014 by joining the network, the global network. Then Loncoche was added to the network. By 2019, we had already 119 communes. And by 2021, which was not an easy year because it was a hybrid year in all the sense of the word, we already had 164 communes. What happened here? We had a lockdown and a release of lockdown processes, and we called upon people, but our call moved back because people could not attend in person to our events because there was social distancing that came back. Next one, please. Next slide. Here we have these photos that really illustrate our process, where we developed all our available resources, technical teams that were very committed and determined alternatives, going from home visits to help the elderly to make pharmacy purchases. All kinds of different activities with the elderly were activities to increase the participatory diagnosis, identify barriers, and generate data that allows us to systematize our work. In 2021, people had a deep need to meet again in person, and in this participatory process involved about 5,000 people. In 2021, there was a revaluing of in-person meeting, and there was a sense of urgency of retaking these processes and adjust them. You can see social distancing, mask wearing, etc. Next one. So we have made strides in these stages. We see how in this participatory diagnosis was at 74 places, and now we have 10 implementations to reduce barriers at the local level. The importance of this process is that it is binding. There's a commitment with the diagnosis. We are not only talking about service provision, but the elderly that were main actors in the requirement, in the obtention of this diagnosis, were really those who gave us data. They are the main actors in this process. You already know the thematic areas, but in this case, I wanted to mention it in particular because the most significant barriers in Chile are associated with good treatment, community health services, and participation in services and service provision. When we obtain data, we have to prioritize thematic areas to identify barriers. Social participation is very important, and health and community services are two of the three main thematic areas. Next one.
a los avances, nosotros
When it
como
comes
comentábamos,
to
tenemos
advances, progress, as we said, we have a local improvement fund that has two lines. One is the continuing improvement cycle, which includes diagnosis and the implementation of the plan of action and its development. And we see a progress from 2020, 19 cycles started, 2021, 30 cycles, 2022 to date, 23 cycles. This is a very particular phenomenon because what happened in the reduction of environmental barriers led us to conduct very hands-on projects. And now in 2021, 2022, we are trying to recover the post-pandemic normalcy criterion. So we are also adjusting the criteria whereby we are going to redefine and prioritize projects. We are adjusting the projects, and it is very important that the reduction of a barrier has a baseline that allows us to compare our results with public policies, and the strengthening of public policy, which is independent of the municipalities, leads to a strengthening of the general environment. Some other advances. I would also like to say that this is a national snapshot of the various cities' demands, things such as social participation. Now, the technical support component here, we developed different things such as the development of a technical guideline, systematization of results 2021, also courses, the development of a tool set, technical assistance agreements, studies of pandemic measures development, and all of this needs to respond to the environment, but it has to maintain the guidelines proposed by WHO. We also have technical assistance agreements and the development of studies of measures adopted during the pandemic, allowing us to use more than 140 local managers. We obtained all this data based on our experience, which for us is something fantastic. As to the dissemination component, because our work will not come to fruition if we don't disseminate our results, contributing to reduce or eliminate the discrimination barriers against the elderly. We have had more than 94,000 interactions with our website from the upload of our programs to and the launch of our web. Our tool set also has been used, and we have been having a virtuous circle. So where we do massive transmissions of newsletters, where we inform what we are conducting at a national level, and we compare experiences. All of that through our website. Here you see what happened during 2020-21, home visits with technical and social teams of workers, and how the social distancing was maintained. And this shows one of the most striking images, most illustrative images, reduction of environmental barriers. The person who lives in this hut was autonomous, but was in a situation. She was at risk of falling because of the terrain. And we helped her to
Que parece algo tan sencillo.
Convert this sloping road into a staircase, which is allowed this individual to recover her ability to go to the neighborhood. She was autonomous, she could conduct her purchases by herself, but she wanted to do that, but the material conditions didn't allow her to leave her home. So we had to address these barriers. We are very grateful for the opportunity of having had this result, and we invite you to continue working and continue to reduce those barriers. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Amaranta Elizabeth.
Thank you, Miranda Elizabeth. All of that, all the information you have provided is very important as a summary. We say that Chile has infrastructure and public spaces accessible to the elderly. You were thinking in all the individuals as indicated in the International Year of the Elderly of 1999 to the Society for all the Cities. And this inclusion considers the digitization process where all countries are being involved. Having said this, we conclude Amaranta's presentation and we will move to Administrator Marie Carmen Bajar, Director of Strategic Projects at the Secretariat Social Assistance System of the State of Jalisco, Mexico. Marie Carmen, can you hear me?
Sí, ya escucho.
Good afternoon. We have a technical problem.
Thank you so much for the invitation to all PAHO and OAS members, and thank you for the participants from the Lima government for inviting Jalisco with regard to friendly cities in Mexico. I'm going to share a presentation to
Avances y resultados.
let you know about the progress we have made and our results.
Sí, se ve.
Perfecto, muchas gracias. Pues les platico que en lo que es
In Mexico, we have been working in Latin America. There are 787 age-friendly cities and communities. And in Mexico, we have 34 of those 34. 32 are in the state of Jalisco. And due to this certification, we started working on 2016 in Guadalajara, which is the capital of the state of Jalisco. And this is why Jalisco has become the example of the network of friendly cities and communities in the country. We have worked with an institute which is called Plan. It is an institute in our metropolitan area which has platforms for collaborative work. This has been an important challenge, and it has allowed us to make progress because 60% of the population of Jalisco is in the metropolitan area. We have over 8 million inhabitants, and we have more than 5 million people in our metropolitan area. So this enabled us to work together and with a cross-cutting effort throughout the 8 municipalities in order to work on older people. since this is a situation which is affecting the entire world due to the age pyramid, and it is important to take important measures. At the beginning of 2020, the Guadalajara metropolitan area was recognized as the first friendly city in Latin America. In order to obtain this classification, monthly work has been done with work roundtables, which allow us to prepare new policies and proposals with regard to everything that is related to the 8 main guidelines set out by the WHO. Right now, they are working on the preparation of protocols, safety, and aging, since we have these issues due to socio-economical situations. There have been instances of violence, and this is why we are now working in a cross-cutting fashion amongst municipalities and institutions in order to help the population that is affected by these circumstances, which affect families. We see people who are violent against the older person, so we are preparing a systematized protocol for their care. Outside the metropolitan area, we have prepared workshops where the main objective and problem is to inform public servants and managers to show them what needs to be done about these problems, because we have identified that municipal governments change every 3 years, and when there's a turnover, the continuity is lost. The municipal governments work for 6 or 3 years, and so some people can be re-elected, and this is how we are able to make use of their experience and to take care in an effective way of the local challenges. This is why we have workshops to inform people about the public policies in favor of a healthy aging in the population, and also trying to have a cross-cutting proposals taking into account the specific needs for each region. Jalisco is one of the largest states in the country, where we have 125 municipalities divided in 12 regions, and these regions have different social, cultural conditions, and this means that we need to analyze the needs of each one of them and propose intervention projects which are adapted to each one of them with regional proposals in order to understand the global situation and to see why we must be part of the network of friendly cities and communities. In Guadalajara, we have public transportation services which need to be accessible, but we cannot propose the same thing to a community which is in a rural area where the needs are very different from the ones of the metropolitan area. This is one of the challenges that we have met, to try to do a regionalization of works with regard to the needs of each one of the communities, and this is why there needs to be a diagnosis and a specific proposal for each one of the regions. One of the most significant problem has been the lack of links in the working places. People that have experience in public administration need to have the possibility of making decisions. You shall all know that whatever can be brought to conversation in order to make decisions, we are meeting with people who cannot make decisions for the future, And this is why we have to think about future scenarios and see what we need to do for a good aging process. We all wish to grow old and die when we're old, and this is why we have to adopt the policies and government plans, which will not have immediate results, but it is important to have very clear future scenarios so that now that we have a chair at the decision-making table in order to see what can be done so that we will be able to participate fully in a healthy way based on the decisions that are made today. There is an important progress made in the generation of report on progress made, but this has brought us to new challenges. The issue of the budget. We propose measures, activities, meetings, workshops, and the generation of public policies, but they always ask us to have an assigned budget, and then we need to inform people so that the people that have power to make decisions in the municipalities have to work with the existing budget, and they have to include at the older adults in all the projects that they may have. This is what we have done in Jalisco with excellent results, and right now this has allowed us to work with the municipalities and to become the state that has the highest number of municipalities which participate in the network of friendly communities. And the main objective, which is to inform people about the dynamic of the demographic pyramid, is important. We're not talking about the distant future, we're talking about 10 or 15 years from now. We need to think about needs, and the governments will not have the possibility to tend to this population because the generations which will be economically active will have other priorities, and we cannot forget the needs of older adults because they need to be compensated by the entire society, because a friendly society has to be friendly with the rest of the population. Thank you so much.
Muchísimas gracias. Como resumen de la presentación de Mari Carmen Vallardo, podemos mencionar que la estrategia de los 8 ejes, con mesas de trabajo, protocolos, seguridad, en la resensibilización.
We are talking about the need to inform others, and this is part of the friendly cities and communities. 60% of municipalities in metropolitan areas. We also see that there is a highlight on the prevention of mistreatment of older adults, and also the need to inform people and train people. We now go to the next presentation. I have here to my right, Johano, who is a postgraduate in health administration. It's Lucia Solis Alcedo, Manager of Social Development of the Metropolitan Municipality of Lima. We will give her the 10 minutes that she has for her presentation of today. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Thank you to those who are here in the room and those who are following us on the internet. I have a presentation. Can you please share the screen? I would like to greet Dr. Gloria Gonzalez, who is representing the Mayor Otelo, And I would like to thank OAS and PAHO, who have organized this round table on older people in the Americas, progress and challenges. I thank them for the possibility of talking here. I would like to inform you about progress and challenges of the Municipality of Lima. I would like to start my 10 minutes mentioning that for the Lima municipality, we give great priority to older persons, and this is already in the framework of what has been mentioned, which is the demographic transition, a demographic transition which occurs in the world, in our country, and in Lima. When we say that the population of older people has increased from 1950 to 13% in 2021, with 13% of the Peruvian population is made up by older people. In Metropolitan Lima, the ratio of homes with one older person is of 44.3%, which means that there is not only an increase in the needs, but also an increased opportunity to work with older people. The other piece of information is that 31% of homes which are integrated by older people has at least one person over 60 years of age who has caloric deficit, that is to say, malnourished, and 83% of the adult feminine population has chronic health issue. And this makes us define that we need to avoid risk factors, taking into account of a healthy lifestyle, as other presenters have mentioned. As far as progress made, we have organized them in two categories. Those where we are promoting, empowering, and social participation, and also where we provide social assistance. In those activities where we are fostering empowerment and social participation, we are connecting older persons and a regional council for older persons. When we provide social assistance, this is a second category. We have attention provided in the municipal home Maria Rosario Araoz, a program which is called Return Home, and the municipal ombudsperson. These experiences by the local government are done within the framework of international regulations and the regulations of the Ministry of Women and Vulnerable Persons and the Ministry of Health. I would like to comment very quickly on what happens with each one of these programs and strategies. Connect to an older person means that when one older person needs to be connected with its peers, with other generations, with public institutions, with private institutions. With this program, we are fostering their social inclusion, socially, digitally, and productive. We're preparing them for a full and active life through SIAM, which is part of the national policy, and we implement this via 3 strategic lines. These 3 strategic lines are here. The first one is, I listen to you with love, which is basically oriented to provide phone support, which started during the pandemic, trying to contribute to improve the physical and emotional health. And this phone line was strengthened during the pandemic, and it helped to try to help through the confinement and isolation of older persons. With 23,000 phone calls, which then became a personalized company in presence or virtually, and now there is a more, these people and this help is done in person. There's another element of the program which is called Actívate, get active. It is a good use of the time of older adults. It helps connect older persons with their peers and bring them to activities which are interesting, maintaining them interested in important activities. There are more than 11,000 participants in these workshops, and there is a social, cultural animation, which is done in presence and virtually. And the third line is a line called Golden Entrepreneurs. This is the first municipal school of entrepreneurship for older persons. This is a virtual and practical training program prepared with voluntary participation. This experience was designed with people who are specialized in entrepreneurship, and there have been more than 1,700 older persons which have participated in virtual spaces to generate businesses. This also promoted the digital inclusion of older adults, and this was very important, and we have been strengthening this in at this time when we're almost out of the pandemic. For this, I only want to add one additional element. This has a multiplying effect. These figures and results, when we talk about 42 municipalities, such as the ones we have been working with technical assistance, care, and also consults for older adults. Thank you.
COREPAN, which is the Regional Council of Elderly People, created with an ordinance 2330 of 2021, creates a dialogue space to coordinate and agree about decision-taking by the public and private sectors, and this regional council is composed by elderly representatives through the organizations that operate in the region, Lima region and Lima itself. The most important, we have conducted already 5 sessions, and we would modulate and plan interventions based on the interest and the needs expressed by the elderly in our different sessions, of which we already conducted 5. Now, social security here, this is the municipal home Maria Rosario Arauz, which is operating. This home is the first CEAPAM accredited by the Ministry of Women and Vulnerable Populations. We worked with the minister and all her teams, which was a milestone for us, because this is one way in which we respond to the law about elderly people, meeting the conditions to cover basic needs such as food, clothing, roof, health, but also other actions based on games, where we work with elderly people 365 days per year. I want to share the Going Back Home program. It's oriented to street people, but more than 50% of the people covered by this program is constituted by elderly, and this program wants to return their rights of street people, to restore their right to identity, to non-discrimination, health, food, through sensitive teams that walks day to day through the streets of Lima to identify street people in Lima and retaking these elderly to their families, or taking them to a shelter, or to simply return to them the dignity that they deserve. We have more than 1,255 individuals covered by this program, some of whom we returned to their families, others such as to municipal homes such as Casa de Todos and other facilities. Municipal ombudsperson for all older people gives social, legal, free of charge training and addresses cases of violence, and helping these elderly to fight for their rights. And we give a comprehensive help, and we have other activities that are ongoing. Finally, I want to share 4 challenges which are very important for the local governments in the logic of basing public policies and international regulations where we include our experiences. First of all, empowering the elderly such as active individuals in community. We are doing this, but it's a challenge to continue doing this to generate the changes we pursue. The second challenge is in raising the awareness of citizens about the social value of the elderly through activities that make visible their knowledge and traditions, and generate intergenerational relations in public spaces. There are some mindsets and ways to act in our society that are rigid, become normal, and give rise to this discrimination against which we are constantly fighting. The third challenge is to identify and scale up best practices of these SIAM centers so that they be implemented in all the districts of Lima, 43 districts just in Metropolitan Lima. And we want the Ministry of the Economy to have a specific budget that would make our action more sustainable. And finally, the final challenge is to improve the information systems of the institutions that provide services to this population, to focus services and helps in cases of emergency. We have an important lesson learned from the pandemic, but it's still a challenge because information is the best way to take adequate decisions. And finally, I want to mention the representative of PAHO when he said that based on experiences, it's important to generate opportunities for the elderly in Lima in the framework of a healthy aging and the exercise of their rights. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lucia. I want to mention briefly that you have showed us different indicators about demographic transition, and you also talked about population-related topics such as the connection to the elderly. You talked about the Regional Council of Municipal Shelters going back home and other programs, but regardless, I would like to mention in the document plan for the decade of healthy aging. Why do I mention this? It's because when it comes to ensuring that communities support the rights of the elderly, we see today that that the reform of shelters, in this area, we saw what Mexico is doing in the state of Jalisco, and we are seeing different programs that promote health services and knowledge through SIAMs in Peru. And many of these activities indicated in this document show that there is progress, and the mention of the 130,000 cities, friendly cities and friendly communities. All of this is very valuable for all of those who want that the elderly be supported and be covered from a health, medical, and legal perspective. So I conclude my words thanking the organizers. You have been very kind with us, and we move to the next roundtable. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias a Gabriela, a
Thanks very much to Gabriela, Amaranta, Mari Carmen, and Lucia for this excellent panel. We move to the final panel. I invite Elena Zúñiga, founder of Elderly Caregivers of the Elderly, and also Pilar Leis, the founder of Longeviarte. Pilar will be moderating this panel, and those who will be with us will be Lilia Camargo, Executive Secretary of the Continental Network of Older Persons in Latin America and the Caribbean, and Professor Denise Edelmeyer, Director of the Center for Aging and Wellness at the University of the West Indies at Mona, Jamaica. Pilar, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. Thank you, Roberto. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, we have come to the last roundtable of the day. But first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this important event and those who are with us today. And also, I want to mention the International Day of the Elderly with the motto this year, resilience of the elderly in this changing world. That day was celebrated 2 days ago. And I want to emphasize the contributions of elderly women to their families and community and the whole of society, because they are a fundamental pillar. This panel, experiences and challenges from the organization. So we will see the role of those civil organizations, academia, and private sector, which are very important when it comes to promoting the rights of the elderly. This goes hand in hand with the decade of a healthy aging, that stresses the importance of collaboration among all sectors on behalf of a healthy aging. I have the great honor of presenting these three professional women who have devoted many years to develop these projects to respond to different needs of the elderly population. I want to invite my colleague and Panamanian national, Lilia Camargo, Executive Secretary of the Continental Network of Older Persons in Latin America and the Caribbean. Could you respond to the next question from your institution? Could you indicate what progress and challenges there are to promote a healthy aging and the rights of the elderly? You have 10 minutes for your presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much, Pilar. And thanks, OAS, PAHO, Roberto, all the organizers of this important event, very important event. It's very difficult to have what I have to say in just 10 minutes, but I'll try to skip to the 10 minutes. I would start by addressing the definition of WHO about healthy aging as a process of promoting and maintaining the functional capabilities, allowing a person to have well-being at old age. This you don't need to mistake aging with old age. Functional capabilities is what allows every person to do and to continue doing what for her or for him is important. So this definition is already a challenge, because what is necessary or what is important for me can be of no importance for others. So I would respond with another question. What have the elderly done in Panama to construct? We are individuals taken care of, philosopher, women, historians, high-performance athletes, elderly women, etc., etc. Yes, they have had to partner. I start with the regional segment. Already in 2003, Panama joined this continental network, which back then was not called a continental network. It was the continental platform of communication to fight for the rights of the elderly. This happened at Chia, Bogota. We were invited to make a presentation that would open a theoretical gap in the agenda. And at that point, we proposed a coordination between sport, aging, and development. Behind the scenes, we were asking for a turning point in the training of new leaders to undo knots. This, unfortunately, and we continue to regret that for a great majority of elderly people, this represented for them a civilian death, because they didn't have free of charge access for communication. And even worse, if we don't have the digital weapons, we cannot connect to the digital world, nor can we build a new thought about old age. We simply cannot. And nor can we reaffirm the validity of that thought and that wish of social protection of the elderly. So this training challenge in new communication technologies, once the continental network had been launched, well, and which of course included our country, Panama, unfortunately didn't have any great response, nor has a response of reaffirmation of beauty and goodness in the aging process. 2007 was a significant milestone in that platform launched in Lima, Peru in 2001. A few days before the meeting in Brasilia in 2007, it was decided in Porto Alegre to launch a Latin American movement led by the elderly. That movement was rebaptized as Continental Network of Elderly People, and this is its current name also. And Panama was elected in 2007 to the Executive Council of that network. Panama has 517,438 elderly people out of a population of almost 4.5 million people. At the domestic level, there have also been attempts. I would like to say that in Panama, we failed when it came to implementing a national network, but there are national federations of pensioners with more than 400,000 retirees, with recreational and sports programs for the elderly. But look, what a paradox. The head doctor that leads that federation forbade swimming competitions as backstroke. And he forbade any races, swimming races. When the elderly athletics start at age 35, and even with the Paralympics and the Olympics of the elderly, inequalities have not been addressed. There are increasingly numerous requirements that tend to eliminate the elderly, especially the elderly women, from these competitions. But we also have the umbrella of the Association of the Elderly in the Republic of Panama that covers 35 associations, 2,500 retirees. But I want to read because it scares me when I look at Executive Decree 238 of 23 June that proposes a challenge. It was proposed by the Ministry of Social Development, and I read that the human being has a life cycle from gestation to old age, and at each stage, the state has to develop public policies and programs that favor their development. It doesn't indicate what kind of development. Through cross-cutting activities, it doesn't mention the cross-cutting aspect that recognize the individual as an entity. What type of entity? That requires interventions taking into account biopsychosocial factors to reach well-being. It doesn't say well-being in old age. So by considering a human being as an entity, this is very, very far from the equivalent of talking about a person and to position that person with the attributes of doing and being. This is scandalous because it confuses old elderly people with old age. Old age is not protected from discrimination for age reasons. So the ministry needs to continue intervening, accentuating the quality of entity as this is defined. It's not also strange that the maximum priority has been given to the ratification of the Inter-American Convention for the Protection of Human Rights of the Elderly. With the negotiation was led by the diplomacy of our country at the OAS. We should have been the first member state of the OAS in ratifying this. We have to take advantage of our opportunity to contribute the 10th ratification required by the instrument, without which the mechanism, the monitoring and assessment mechanism will not be implemented. This convention prohibits age-related discrimination. The convention does not enter in this area.
The continental network, the fact that I am 80 years old does not mean that I do not continue to be up to date and that I do not continue to be a professional. I am speaking on behalf of all professionals who are over 60 years of age. We are not dead. So we would like
junto con la subdirectora general del Programa de Ciencias Sociales de UNESCO, Gabriela Ramos, mexicana. Finalmente, el mayor desafío que enfrentamos nosotros, sociedad civil de personas mayores en Panamá, es lograr convencer a las instancias
to convince the government that we are not enemies. We are not their opponents. We are Panamanian. We are citizens of Panama. We don't receive assistance. We demand non-discrimination is our right. It's justice and democracy. Requesting the creation of independent Secretariat for the elderly is a sign of equity, because there are groups already for women, children, and adolescents. So we also need such a group for the elderly. And now I refer to my friend Vega. It is necessary that Panama should understand the complementary character of the Ombudsman's office with a center at this debate. We need to facilitate the construction of that complementary character that is required to address the problems of the elderly. Finally, without a memory, there's no democracy. And there's no democracy without the elderly. Either you construct democracy with us or against us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emilia, for your words. It is very difficult to summarize what you said because everything you said was very valuable, the Continental Network and also your work in Arte Espacio. This difference between aging of the person, of the being, and to highlight the voices of older people in Panama and in the entire region. And it is also very important to see digital inclusion and social inclusion to be able to participate in the digital society. So we need to communicate with older people. They need to continue training and belonging to this digital world. And it is also important to point out that we are part of this convention and we want to ratify the convention in Panama. So we are going to work with other civil society organizations. And we need to continue having public policies, and we hope that in Panama, all the necessary mechanisms will be activated. Thank you so much for your contribution. And I now give the floor to the following member of the panel, Denise Edelmeyer, Chair, Director of the Center for Aging and Wellness at the University of West Indies, Mona, Jamaica. Dr. Denise, I repeat the question. Can you please tell us which are the progress, experiences, and challenges for a healthy aging of older persons? I give you 10 minutes for your presentation. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, although it's very difficult to follow the last speaker with such a powerful presentation on behalf of older persons. May I thank the organizers, the OAS and PAHO, for inviting us to participate. And I want a special mention here, having worked in this area for some 35, 40 years, to also acknowledge the role that Latin America has played in promoting the rights of older people. many of the meetings that I went to many years ago, coming out of Argentina, the issue of the rights of older people were constantly being put onto the table. And I think I really would like to acknowledge that contribution from the region. We are a university and we're therefore a training institution. We're a unique university in that we are the University of the West Indies, and therefore we have campuses across the region. We are based at the Mona campus, and we work against the background of all that you have heard from the various countries today, because Jamaica is no different in all of those issues. One of our chief advances is that we are a university department today, and here I acknowledge PAHO WHO. Our work with PAHO and WHO, as well as Help Age International, started way back in the 90s. We became a PAHO WHO collaborating center in 1997. Enrique, I just looked at the instrument. And I think today that we are a university department, we are no longer based on just personalities and advocates, that when those of us who started it have gone, there will be an aging institution in our university responsible for training, I think is probably our best advance, that UWI recognized the importance of UWI. The staff is finally funded. So yes, we need grants, but at least we know we have a job. We started, as you would imagine, since we started with PAHO, focusing on healthcare, recognizing healthcare as a human right. So we did take up the rights issues and the advocacy for the rights of access to health, especially primary health care. Alongside of that, one of our advances was that we started training. It's also one of our challenges, because in those days, we recognized the importance of the community and the community caregiver. And for many years, our major program trained community caregivers. But at some point, we got lost and recognized that we were now a university, and we moved on to offering master's degrees in gerontology, and now within the last 2 years, clinical geriatrics. So it was a challenge. How did we balance that and balance the need to still provide training for the caregiver? Fortunately, we will go back there come January, and we will remember that the caregivers are a critical part and that they need as much training in understanding the aging process. So I think that's one of the most important advances. It has made us advocates for primary health care, because at least 3 of the members of the staff are still practicing clinicians as well. So we bring to it the face of older people, the problems of older people, the medical problems, the health related. And of course, as has been discussed many times today, we can't talk about health without talking about poverty, without talking about the social determinants. We are seeing the pictures coming out of Puerto Rico of the housing, etc. So you can't talk about good health, active aging, healthy aging without addressing the social dimension, which we have expanded over the years. So that I think is an advance. One of the important aspects of our work, and this came out of an experience I had speaking to the Ministry of Health, actually back in the 80s, when I was advocating for geriatric care in primary care, and the health ministers said to me, "Where's your evidence?" That has stayed with the Mona Aging and Wellness Center. So we therefore see ourselves as the institution to provide the evidence for whatever the issue is. And in this, we have forged tremendous links with the Ministry of Health, the Family Health Unit, and we are often asked to do the research. One of our successes, the challenge being that it took too long, the challenge being that it costs money, and money for research in aging is non-existent. I used to sit with real jealousy when HIV and AIDS came on the scene and the money was just flowing. And I said, could I have 10% of that? But we have finally got the needs of older people at the community done. And this year it is actually in the minister's primary healthcare renewal of primary healthcare to introduce geriatric care. I share that because it's taken us 25 years to get it there. So don't give up. To the younger members of your webinar, don't give up. If you are an advocate and you nag enough and you keep at it, eventually somebody will listen to you. So it is against that background that this meeting is very timely, that the additional advocacy about the rights is timely. One thing that has come up, which is a challenge, I guess it's an advance, but it's also a challenge. As we have looked at the needs of older people, the issue of elder abuse has come up. The issue, we have done the research on it, but I don't know about Latin America, but Caribbean people will not talk about what happens at home inside of their house. And the current system where you have to go to the police, etc., is something that older people simply will not do. And it raises one of the other challenges that we have, the legislation, or do not have. I was unable in any of the Caribbean countries to find legislation that says this is the procedure to do. What do you do if you identify it, whether you're running a caregiving service or you are a physician? And much of the abuse that we are identifying in Jamaica is in fact financial abuse. Caregivers taking away the pension on the grounds that they are going to go and buy the medications, etc. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face, that it would be really important for the rights and looking at the rights to clearly define. But it's not going to be enough to simply have a Charter of Rights or a convention. We have to be committed to looking at that convention, looking at it. What needs to be put in place, whether it's legislation, programs, those, I noticed some people spoke to the ombudsman. Does that have a legal framework? Is there something that if you come up, how do you protect that older person? And it's not just protecting them from the abuse, it's protecting them from the backlash from the family and for somebody who says, well, I'm not going to look after you anymore. So I think that's something that this meeting and this effort to get the convention ratified by so many of us is so critical. We have the other issues around the demographic transition. Perhaps we've done our work too well, because one of my challenges, or one of our challenges here now, is the knee-jerk reaction that we are seeing to the demographic challenges. All of a sudden, and we've been writing about it for 20 years, governments in the region have come to the realization that we are in that final stage of the aging process. We now have, some of us are already below replacement value. And I'm hearing statements like, well, let's make them have more children. The answer to the demographic, which is a success story because that was what it was all about. But I think we have to be very careful, and it's certainly a challenge. How do we handle that demographic transition from the advocacy point of view, from the research point of view? There are so many unemployed youth. It's not the answer to have more children. The answer came from the speaker before us when she spoke about the fact that she's 80, but she's still able to function. She's still able to contribute. So why do we have retirement ages of 60 and 65 when many people are functional? And put tests in if you want that we are functional. We spoke to that. So I think that's one of the challenges that we have going forward. And as I use up my 10 minutes, I think we need to see COVID from both a positive and a negative light. We have run a vaccine center here since COVID started. I have never seen in my 40-odd years of working with older people such a tremendous response to the needs of older people by the governments in the region. Older people were declared vulnerable, things were put in place to help them. The spokesperson for Barbados spoke about putting in the networks in the community. We had community health aides. I believe that we have a launching pad here to really push for the convention to be accepted. People are now sensitive to older people, to the needs of older people. Somebody spoke to the electoral stuff. I think all of us need to know what their numbers are on the electoral lists so we can use that to push policymakers. But I do believe that there was a silver lining to COVID despite, and surely we regret the losses. But I think we should use that to move forward as we advocate for our older people. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, doctora Denise. Ojalá tuviéramos más tiempo para seguir escuchándola acerca de sus experiencias y de alguna manera pues resaltar todos los desafíos que también tiene el Caribe, ¿verdad? En tema de derechos y también de accesos, ¿verdad? A poder ejercer los derechos. Muy importante lo que dijo la doctora en la parte de la atención primaria en salud, lo que ha hecho el centro. Es de gran importancia esta capacitación gerontológica y geriátrica. Y además los grandes problemas que tienen, ¿verdad? Todo lo que es las ciencias, las gerociencias, las ciencias de envejecimiento para seguir, pues...
This is the interpreter. Our time is over, so unfortunately we have to turn off our microphones. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, doctora Denise. Ahora rápidamente vamos a pasar con ya, pues, nos cabe resaltar la última panelista, ¿verdad? La licenciada Elena Zúñiga. Ella es fundadora y directora de la Escuela de Cuidadores del Adulto Mayor en Perú. Elena, por favor, tienes 10 minutos para contestar la pregunta. El micrófono es todo tuyo. Gracias.
Gracias, Pilar. Quiero empezar agradeciendo a la jefatura de la sección de grupos en situación de vulnerabilidad de la OEA, liderado por el doctor Roberto Rojas, por la cordial invitación, a la OPS y la Municipalidad de Lima. Yo soy directora y fundadora de Escuela de Cuidadores del Adulto Mayor, que es una organización que capacita a los cuidadores informales, pero también fortalece la vocación y la empatía para poder desarrollar este rol tan importante al interior de los hogares, de las familias y también al interior de los hogares geriátricos. Antes de empezar, quisiera también poder agradecer a aquellas organizaciones que hacen posible que Escuela de Cuidadores tenga este acercamiento con los adultos mayores de Lima, que es el albergue municipal María Rosa Arauz, que precisamente en su presentación mostró algunas fotos donde aparecen nuestras cuidadoras, quienes a través de una alianza estratégica desarrollan múltiples actividades en favor de los albergados de esta institución. También a la Beneficencia de Lima, con la que ya tenemos un convenio que nos ha permitido poder llegar a más adultos mayores y poder brindarles un cuidado con calidad, vocación y empatía. Y estamos empezando ya un convenio con el Hospital Geriátrico Militar a puertas ya de poder instaurarse. Esta es la parte más complicada de las mesas redondas porque es la última parte, dado que hay mucha información de la cual se ha conversado y tenemos que ya cerrar este evento en los 10 minutos que tengo, así que voy a resaltar lo más importante y desde la organización privada como Escuela de Cuidadores del Adulto Mayor, quisiera poder profundizar y poder mostrar los desafíos a modo de reflexión. Nosotros tenemos una gran brecha en relación a los objetivos de desarrollo del milenio que se dieron en el año 2000, en donde no se tocaron muchos aspectos sobre envejecimiento. A consecuencia de ello, el tema de envejecimiento fue excluido de prioridades de apoyo técnico y financiero de varios fondos y programas de las Naciones Unidas. Ya a través de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, tenemos dos, solo para señalar algunos ejemplos, que están relacionados a la erradicación del hambre, que propone también poner fin a la malnutrición y considera a la persona adulto mayor dentro de estas metas. Tenemos también el objetivo 11, que habla sobre ciudades y asentamientos humanos inclusivos, seguros y resilientes, y hemos tenido algunos expositores que han ampliado mucho estas iniciativas en otros países. Estos objetivos de desarrollo sostenible han influido en la instauración de la Convención Interamericana sobre la Protección de los Derechos Humanos de las Personas Mayores, pero en el caso de nuestro país, la adhesión se ha dado recién en el año 2021. Uno de los grandes desafíos es profundizar en esta convención, en difundir y comprender en qué consisten, porque podemos tenerlo bien escrito y como lo ha comentado también Denise, no solamente es conocer, también es el hacer. Además de ello, tenemos otros grandes desafíos como es el maltrato. Y diferentes tipos de maltratos son los que existen el día de hoy en nuestro país, en América Latina y en el mundo. Hablamos de un maltrato físico, un maltrato psicológico, hablamos de abandono y negligencia, pero también hay un maltrato estructural, que consiste en la falta de políticas sociales y de salud orientadas al adulto mayor. También hablamos de un maltrato médico, que son costes limitados en la atención del adulto mayor, y algunos datos que corroboran que existe maltrato y aún más en nuestro país son los estudios de investigación que realizan algunas organizaciones dentro de la OMS y también algunos especialistas que dicen que 1 de cada 6 personas mayores de 60 años han sufrido alguna forma de maltrato. Dentro de estos maltratos han sido ejercidos 64.2% por trabajadores de organizaciones que se dedican al cuidado del adulto mayor. Y en pandemia esta cifra se elevó a un 84%. En el 2020, solo en nuestro país, se reportaron más de 2.500 casos de maltrato. ¿Por qué menciono esto como un desafío y también a modo de reflexión? Porque la mayoría de personas que ejerce el maltrato al adulto mayor son sus propios cuidadores, son los mismos familiares que están a cargo de velar por la integridad del adulto mayor. Pero ¿qué pasa con la situación del cuidado, tanto formal e informal a nivel mundial? La labor de los profesionales de enfermería es una labor feminizada. Es una labor poco valorada y poco reconocida a nivel mundial, pese a que somos más del 50% de profesionales de salud de la masa laboral. Más del 80% de cuidadores en el mundo son mujeres, pero no tienen ninguna protección social a nivel global. Muchas de ellas en algunos países tienen intentos, algunos también políticas heterogéneas. En el caso de nuestro país no existe una ley que proteja al cuidador del adulto mayor. Dado que estos perfiles, roles y tareas del cuidado se llevan a cabo completamente separados de la economía del mercado y al mismo tiempo son social y políticamente invisibles, el valor económico y social no es generalmente reconocido. Muchas veces el rol del cuidado recae en la mujer, en el miembro de la familia que está al cuidado del papá, de la mamá o de algún familiar. Y no solo es ejercido de manera voluntaria, a veces también es impuesto por la misma familia, sobre todo en sociedades patriarcales. Tenemos este y varios desafíos por mencionar, pero ya resumiendo y dado el tiempo que se nos ha brindado, quería mencionar también algunos avances que nosotros como Escuela de Cuidadores venimos desarrollando para poder hacer que la labor del cuidador del adulto mayor sea reconocido a nivel nacional. Tenemos algunos avances divididos en 3 ejes. Primero, ayudar a los cuidadores y a las cuidadoras a combinar estas tareas del cuidado con el trabajo remunerado. Muchos de los cuidadores abandonan sus trabajos por ejercer el cuidado dentro del hogar y eso luego repercute en problemas financieros. El Estado no subvenciona su labor, por lo tanto debe existir cierta flexibilidad, pero además una conciencia social sobre lo que es el rol del cuidado. Tenemos que eliminar esta frase, entre comillas, cama adentro para la labor de un cuidador, porque muchas veces en nuestra escuela hemos recibido demanda de cuidadores para poder participar dentro de la labor del cuidado de un adulto mayor, pero resulta que pretenden que el cuidador desarrolle no solo la labor del cuidado, sino también que realice algunas otras labores domésticas. Queremos mejorar el bienestar físico y mental de los cuidadores y las cuidadoras. Para poder cuidar una persona, también debe ejercer acciones de autocuidado. Y reconocer a los cuidadores y cuidadoras, garantizando sus derechos. En Escuela de Cuidadores proponemos un programa que forma a nuestros cuidadores, primero ayudándolas a que fortalezcan su autoestima. Muchas de nuestras cuidadores, quizá un 70% de ellas, también son población vulnerable. Son personas mayores de 40 años, incluso hasta 65 a 70 años, que han participado en nuestros programas porque quieren aprender a cuidar, quieren hacerlo bien, con conocimiento, sabiendo lo que hacen, poniéndole vocación y además empatizando con lo que siente el adulto mayor para poder brindarle un cuidado de calidad. Tratamos de incorporar contenidos curriculares para eliminar el edadismo y los estereotipos. Queremos también generar a través de la investigación y de todos los profesionales de salud que participamos en la formación de cuidadores del adulto mayor, generar evidencia sobre el problema que tiene el cuidador a nivel nacional y tratar de recaudar fondos de algunas organizaciones, partiendo también de la organización de los mismos cuidadores y empadronamiento de los mismos. Es por eso que una de nuestras prioridades próximamente es instaurar la primera asociación de cuidadores a nivel nacional y como sociedad civil organizada, liderada por profesionales de salud, tratar de proponer ante nuestros gobernantes una ley que realmente proteja al cuidador, la cual hasta el día de hoy no existe. También abordamos dentro del programa de formación del cuidador los orígenes del maltrato, a través de diversas teorías. Existen muchas teorías sobre el maltrato, pero las que nosotros abordamos para poder desarrollar este contenido curricular que forman nuestros cuidadores, primero es la teoría del estrés o el cansancio del cuidador. Una persona cansada trabajando 12 horas continuas no puede ejercer un cuidado de calidad si no tiene sus horarios de descanso, sus horas de sueño y una buena alimentación. Otra de las teorías que respalda nuestro programa es la de la dependencia o discapacidad de la persona mayor. A mayor dependencia del adulto mayor, mayor carga de trabajo para el cuidador. Pero además de ello, si la cuidadora o el cuidador no conoce de la discapacidad, no sabe, por ejemplo, realizar un adecuado lavado de manos, no va a poder distribuir su horario adecuadamente para un buen cuidado. También lo enfocamos a través de la teoría del aislamiento social, no solamente del adulto mayor, sino también del mismo cuidador que deja de lado su familia, su pareja y su trabajo una vez que ejerce el cuidado del adulto mayor. Son esta y otras teorías y por último, por ejemplo, la teoría del aprendizaje social o violencia transgeneracional y la teoría feminista. Tratamos de promover que nuestras cuidadoras tengan contacto con el adulto mayor a través de los convenios ya mencionados, en donde ellas puedan interactuar y puedan validar la verdadera vocación que tienen para un cuidado integral del adulto mayor con calidad y eficiencia. También tratamos de valorar el rol del cuidador a nivel social y a nivel familiar, haciendo respetar fundamentalmente sus derechos humanos, pero también planteando nuevas propuestas para poder protegerlos. La Organización Social de Cuidadoras a nivel nacional, como ya lo había mencionado, y la promoción de un envejecimiento saludable abordado desde la juventud. No podemos hablar de envejecimiento saludable si no tenemos cuidadoras saludables. Empezamos por ahí tratando de instaurar estilos de vida a través de la nutrición, a través del ejercicio y a través del fortalecimiento de su estado emocional y psicológico, porque muchas de nuestras cuidadoras son incluso mujeres que han recibido maltrato físico por parte de sus parejas y también abordamos ese aspecto para que ellas sientan que la labor que están realizando es algo encomiable y algo que no lo hace cualquier otra persona o cualquier otra mujer dentro de su labor. Eso era todo lo que quería mencionar y finalmente para concluir, yo creo que las políticas y todo lo que queremos realizar tenemos que repetirlo una y otra vez, tenemos que compartirlo y difundirlo como lo hacemos en este evento para que se puedan realizar y se puedan desarrollar. Y queremos también expresar a nombre de toda Escuela de Cuidadores, que somos un staff de profesionales de salud, que dentro de nuestro rol de formación de otros profesionales de salud en las universidades, queremos instaurar y anular estos estereotipos que tiene la juventud sobre los adultos mayores. Es otra de las cosas que también consideramos importante, tanto a nivel de la formación de profesionales de salud como la de los cuidadores intrafamiliares. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Elena. por compartirnos tu programa tan valioso y siempre resaltando la perspectiva de derechos, también la inclusión de las cuidadoras y los cuidadores con esa perspectiva de género, porque ya sabemos que las personas cuidadoras, las personas que cuidan, tienen el trabajo uno de los trabajos más invisibilizados y no remunerados que existen, ¿no? Y con todo ese tipo de programas, de acciones que estás haciendo, y la cual te felicito, ¿no? Y te animo a seguir adelante, ¿verdad? Como bien dices, disminuimos esa posibilidad de violencias y promovemos el buen trato, también ese autocuidado para las cuidadoras y contrarrestamos el síndrome del burnout, lo prevenimos. Así que muchísimas gracias. Y ahora pues doy pase rápidamente a Roberto Rojas para que haga las conclusiones y el cierre.
Muchas gracias, Pilar, y gracias a Edilia, Denise y Elena por sus excelentes presentaciones. Las conclusiones ya cada una de las moderadas lo ha hecho. Es una jornada larga, casi de 3 horas, literalmente. En primer lugar, voy a agradecer a la regidora Gloria González por permitirnos estar en este espacio y también por su trabajo de muchos años de promover también los derechos de las personas mayores. Asimismo, agradecer a nuestros colegas de OPS que se sumaron a coorganizar este evento, desde el representante en la OPS en Perú, el doctor Garzón, la doctora Talavera, a mis colegas en Washington, el doctor Enrique Vega, la doctora Patricia Mors, Delfina Álvarez, también Brenda Cadena, a mis colegas del Teatro de Lima que nos recibieron también, a Bruno y a José, a Jessica, asimismo a las intérpretes, a mis colegas de la OEA, a Betilde, a Nicole, a Mario, a Mariette, a Janel por toda esta organización. Y evidentemente esto es un proceso en construcción. Esperamos que Panamá o cualquier otro país de la región se sume a ser el 10º país para activar el mecanismo que le haga seguimiento a los compromisos internacionales que han adquirido el país, pero finalmente también agradecer a nuestras panelistas, sobre todo a las que nos acompañaron virtualmente, pero a las que se tomaron el trabajo de venir hasta el centro de Lima. Muchas gracias, Gabriela, muchas gracias, Elena, muchas gracias a Catherine y también a Lucía, que hoy no nos acompaña, ella tuvo que tener una reunión, por darse el trabajo de estar aquí, y finalmente gracias al equipo de KMJK que nos está haciendo la transmisión, y también a los que nos están esperando en el catering desde hace rato. Ya el café se enfrió, así que les invito a tomar un café frío, espero que no. Y muchas gracias por todo. Que tengan buenas noches.